Workshop is recorded. And it is live streamed on Zoom webinar. There will be no votes taken during this workshop. So let's start with introduction of commissioners and presenters around the table, and then the rest of the room. I will kick off. Garrison McMurtry, County Commissioner, District 3.
Mike Changshaw, Commissioner, District 6. Tara Jones-Singh, Commissioner, District 1.
Mary Jo McGuire, Commissioner, District 2.
Rita Moran, Commissioner, District 4.
Lynn Becker, County Manager.
Terry Collins, Deputy County Manager, Economic Growth and Community Investment.
Josh Wilson, Community Economic Development.
Heather Worthington, Principal Derby, please.
Kelly Miller, Commissioner, District 7.
Florence Fair, I'm just at the clerk's office. Claudia Gonzalez, Meeting Economic Development. Derek Gomez, Community Economic Development. And Schultz, Community Development. And also on Community Economic Development.
Max Ferguson.
Marie Lynn Walsh, Administrative Director of the staff. Alex Christian, Chief Operating Officer.
Larry Thornton, Administrative Director, Health and Wellness.
Wonderful, thank you. Today's workshop highlights Ramsey County's fiscal health. We would hear a summary of the goals of the analysis and its relationship to our work. Urban 3 consultant Heather Worthington will take us through their findings. And now I'll hand it off to presenters to kick off the workshop.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I did bring the full Community Economic Development crew pretty much today. We do kind of geek out at this kind of information. So, and we're just down the hallway today. So that's part of it. I'm really excited to have Heather here next to me and kicking us off with some really interesting, but also informative, I'll call table setting for a series of things that are going to come today and into the following weeks and months. I want to alert you to the fact that what you were given as part of a presentation is an abridged version. You're not losing any information. Heather's just got a much more rich presentation deck that she's going to walk through in a minute. So we're going to have a little bit of a transition piece, but it's done to kind of walk through Urban 3 and Heather have a really wonderful way of storytelling and talking through a lot of this data through an illustrative piece. And so rather than giving you and the broader public 100+ slides to kind of sift through, save some ink, we gave you the abridged version and we're going to walk through it. That fuller version will be made available as well as a future final report. One thing I wanted to also just add to it is there's a good chance as you jot down your notes and your questions that later slides might hit them spot on. So I just encourage you, just so that we can get through the full deck, hold some of your questions till some natural breakpoints that Heather has. If you have a really burning question, I understand that too. Heather adapts pretty easily. I'll jump right in to a little bit of the agenda today. Actually, it might just be easier to just jump right into the reason for. So for many of you, you have seen a version of this this fiscal health analysis, or kind of a high level version of this over the summer as part of a workshop that you all had, or a board retreat. But I want to kind of take us back just a moment to say that in 2020, in the development of the Economic Competitiveness and Inclusion Plan, that was our first version of this plan. We contracted with Urban 3 to develop this fiscal health analysis. At that time, I think many of our motivations and many of the reasons why we chose to do that is to really insert data in as a decision-making tool with our cities, with our community stakeholders. As you'll see with the slides that Heather will kind of bring to you all today, it's highly illustrative, and it begins to reshape what folks think about certain things around land uses and land productivity, how it intersects with county finances and city finances for that matter. And so we wanted to kind of certainly, thought that was a valuable piece as we were introducing kind of where the county was going to be in this economic development space. The second part is around wealth extraction. So one interesting thing we asked them back in 2020 was to overlay this land productivity analysis, overlay with historic red line maps, really to kind of begin to demonstrate how wealth extraction happens in our community at that level, around value and around land. And then lastly, I just want to call out that our community is rich with different land uses and different types of communities. And this analysis at that time, or this analysis today and the analysis in 2020, absolutely reinforced the wonderful differences that we have across all of our 19 communities. So really, this analysis was that foundational piece of our ECI plan in 2020, and it felt almost natural for us to start there again as we began to look at updating our ECI plan 2.0. As you know, ECI plan is embedded within our intergenerational wealth and economic justice strategic priority. And as Heather starts, as I kick it over here just momentarily, we asked them to update the model to kind of give a 5-year comparison where things were and where things are at. Begin to understand a bit more about the dynamics that are happening across the county, including within our downtown, and begin to kind of shine a light a little bit more on where we have opportunities, and that is in those areas around tax exempt lands. So I kind of hit my bullet. Here's spot on here, just around tax exempt property, be it owned by Ramsey County or others, represent opportunities for us to begin to think about how we respond to property tax pressures. Ramsey County is highly urbanized. We say that in many of our talking points, that we are the most, developed county in the state. So redevelopment is our business, and areas of highest concentration and highest productivity are important and do matter a lot. Redevelopment though comes at a cost. It typically is more complex, usually takes a little bit more time. But we have an existing portfolio of projects that the county is working on, actively on, working really hard to expedite. And we have some additional ones that are on the horizon. So we have ways that we are beginning and have been responding to those pressures. And then lastly, a little bit around land productivity. And, one of the aspects of the property tax pressures that we've seen is the shifts that have been happening as the county sees some differences, and not to kind of get out ahead, but, changes in downtown where office residential or office properties are looking for, new opportunities, new tenants. They are absolutely having shifting a lot of those pressures to residential uses and residential properties. So with that kind of table setting, I want to turn this over to Heather and let her speed through a lot of slides.
Well, good afternoon. Thanks for having me here today. Urban 3 is just so pleased to be able to work with the Ramsey County again. And I am also pleased as a former employee of Ramsey County and a resident of St. Paul. It's just really exciting to do this work for y'all. So thank you for having us today. Urban 3 is located in Asheville, North Carolina, but we are a fully hybrid remote team. And our analyst who did this work is actually in New York. And T will be watching this later, so I just want to acknowledge him and the wonderful work he did for Ramsey County on this model. And this is your 3-dimensional value per acre model that you're looking at right here. So let's jump right into your tax system, just to kind of ground us in how your tax is generated in terms of your land use. In Minnesota, you are primarily in Minnesota a very property tax dependent state. Like the states to the left on this graph, You can see that you rely primarily on, property tax, a little bit of sales tax, and that seems to be increasing for you, certainly between the last time we did your analysis and today. And then a little bit of income tax. So let's take a look at how taxes work in Minnesota. Oops, I went too fast. I usually do that. So I will just say that in Minnesota, we have one of the most complex taxation systems in the nation. When we do a Minnesota project, this part of the deck, this chapter is always 7 to 10 slides to explain the Minnesota property tax system. In other states, this is 3 slides. So Minnesota is a very complex system, and largely that grew out of the 1970s with the Minnesota Miracle and a lot of these programs which were developed to try and kind of rebalance a community's property tax burden between commercial and residential property. So y'all are familiar with this. You know what this looks like, and this is what it really kind of rolls up to in terms of the impact on a non-homestead residential there in the middle, a homesteaded residential and commercial properties. These are properties valued at about $300,000. That's a decent median value for the Twin Cities. And you can see that commercial in Minnesota, as you know, is taxed at about twice the rate as residential. This is how your tax dollar breaks down. And again, in Minnesota, this is relatively simple. Other states are much more complex in terms of this sharing of that tax dollar. And so, but here it's primarily county, city, fairly evenly balanced between the two, then the schools, and then your special taxing districts, soil and water, watershed districts, et cetera. We looked at your budget. This is your 26 general fund, your revenues of 929 million, and your expenditures. And we really looked primarily in this phase of the project. We looked at sales tax and property tax. And your sales tax is a relatively new source for you, and we had not looked at that in 2020. So this is called a Sankey chart. I'm going to go back, I went too fast. This is a Sankey chart, just shows where revenue is flowing into your system and how it's flowing out. We have not mapped your expenditures yet, and so we do not have the outflows for this in terms of where those tax dollars go on the left and how they flow out on the right. But this is what we mapped today, was property and sales tax. So we start by looking at your total assessed value. And Ramsey County, as Josh noted, is the only fully urbanized county in the state. It is a county that has an immense amount of infrastructure. And it also has, interestingly, and we didn't realize this until we got into your data, you have a lot of water. And so what we wanted to pull out of the model for you today in terms of economic development were some of these key parcels within the county. And so we looked at North St. Paul, which has been particularly productive in the last 5 years, the 3M headquarters, which kind of sit on the edge of St. Paul, Maplewood, and then Rosedale Mall and downtown St. Paul. This is your value per acre. And you'll notice that when this image gets turned on, when this layer gets activated, you start to see the purple spikes here become a little bit more fine-grained, right? And so what you're looking at here is a very productive downtown St. Paul with areas to the west, like Grand Avenue, Selby Avenue, very productive areas of St. Paul. If you look out into the suburbs, you also see Roseville, and you see White Bear Lake, and you see North St. Paul, very productive communities in terms of the amount of commercial mixed use and mixed use residential that those cities are building. So that's kind of the story. These are your most productive parcels. Galtier Towers, which is just a few blocks away, is your most productive parcel in the county as a whole. But Flats on 94 doing very well. Downtown White Bear Lake doing very well. Mac Roland as a neighborhood is doing really well. North Oaks, et cetera. One of the things we like to do at Urban 3 is analyze the productivity of a community in terms of its comparison to the larger area. So in the case of your analysis, we compared the city of St. Paul to Ramsey County. This is the productivity math, St. Paul to Ramsey County, about 1.6 to 1. And when you look at St. Paul itself, you can see that this is a very productive part of the county. It has about, the county itself has about 29%, I'm sorry, 71% taxable parcels or acres, excuse me, and then the city has about 54% taxable. So the city of St. Paul has a significant number of parcels that are not taxed. This is a story that you will see played out throughout the state. Again, your downtown, your St. Paul taxable value is 1.6 times greater than the amount of county area it takes up. So this is the productivity map. The downtown to the city is about 5.2 times more productive. So downtown is doing relatively well. We would like to see this number at 6 or better in the United States. St. Paul downtown to the county as a whole is 8.3 times, again, very respectable. And if we look at downtown Minneapolis and Hennepin County, just as a comparison, this is what we get. So downtown Minneapolis is extremely productive in terms of its relationship to downtown St. Paul and the two counties. Just a kind of a little bit of wayfinding. We also wanted to look at taxable versus exempt land, and I alluded to this earlier, but 24% of the land area in Ramsey County is exempt, but 18% of it is right of way. And we thought this was really interesting because I think we all understand this when we drive around, right? We have a lot of freeways, we have a lot of MnDOT right of way. The county itself has a lot of right of way, and then you got all this water. So that exempt portion, that 24%, is kind of an enormous opportunity area for the county long term. We probably can't do anything with that right of way or water, right? So we wanted to also kind of look at St. Paul. I went too fast. St. Paul, a similar kind of breakdown, a little less water, a little more right of way, a little bit more exempt, but very similar in terms of its comparison to the county. And then looking at taxable versus exempt land, this is just St. Paul. Again, that right of way is massive. So 94 is a big chunk of right of way that comes through, and then you've got 35. So you've really got a significant amount of land area that's devoted to rights of way. In the downtown, we wanted to dig in a little bit to this idea of right of way versus taxable and exempt. And you're one of the first communities where we've actually mapped the right of way because it was such an enormous land use. And so we didn't feel like we could leave that off the table for you. But downtown has 33% exempt parcels. And that's one of the highest in the nation. It's not the highest, but it's certainly in the highest third of the nation, I would say. And we've worked in 46 states and 2 Canadian provinces. So this is one of the highest rates of tax exemption we've seen in a downtown. But I will say this, when you compare yourself to other capital cities in the United States, you're right in line with them. So if we were looking at Providence, Rhode Island, or Tallahassee, Florida, you would see a very similar picture. So downtowns that are capital cities are always a high amount of tax exemption. This is Maplewood, and Maplewood is about 28% exempt and about 16% right of way, and then 4% of water. And that's your county-owned parcels within Maplewood. So 14% of those exempt parcels, about half, are owned by Ramsey. So this is another big opportunity for Ramsey. And then just showing you again, Hennepin by comparison, about 22% of their land area is exempt. And if we look at that side by side, again, because of the capital city effect, Ramsey County is a higher rate of tax exemptions. These are some comparisons between 2020. So if you look at the lower right corner, you'll see we've tagged this as the 2020 data. It's a pretty significant change between 2020 and 2025. You have a significant amount of increase in productivity in suburban areas, primarily because of development. And so we wanted to kind of go in and pull some of those examples out of the model for you so you could see what was happening here. Again, here they are side by side. You can see that St. Paul is really thickened up a lot. So especially those areas along Grand and Selby, kind of those east-west streets, have really become more productive for you economically in the last 5 years. One of the things I would just say as a quick aside, something you're seeing in St. Paul quite a bit because of some zoning changes is the infill development for smaller scale apartment buildings. So these are like 8 to 20 units probably. These represent a pretty significant amount of value increase for you. And I've got a couple examples for you later in the deck. So this is what it looks like in a 5-year period. You've added right around 22 million or $22 billion in value in your model. So it's fairly significant. And downtown St. Paul, though, in 2020 was 13.2 times. Okay? And today it's 8.3 times. This is primarily because of the number of tax exempt parcels that changed in the last 5 years. So you had a number of parcels in the downtown proper become exempt in the last 5 years. So that's the side by side 2020 to 25, county to downtown.
I have a question.
For the future, do we have a list of what those parcels are? I mean,
I'm gonna show you.
Oh. Super interesting.
This is downtown to, in 2020, this is downtown North St. Paul, and I'm getting to that side, Commissioner. And this is downtown North St. Paul, 2020 to 2025. This was the article number 7 apartments that were built, just spiking up there in North St. Paul. Well done, North St. Paul, adding 91 million in value. That is for a small town like North St. Paul, that is significant. That's rare that we would see that much in a 5-year period. This is your total value lost in downtown St. Paul between 20 and 25. It's 2.6 million or 96 acres total. And Commissioner, that is the areas that you see that are outlined in black. Those are the parcels that changed. Again, downtown Minneapolis, a little bit more productive. Okay, so let's look at some of the municipalities that we pulled, yes.
Yep.
Oh. Heather, just real quick, North St. Paul's growth is due to what?
This parcel right here, if you look up there, it's the, oh, I went too fast. Article number 7, apartments.
It's what? Oh,
It's the big purple spike there. That was the project that drove that value up for North St. Paul.
okay.
Yep.
I'll just add, it's a really well done, beautiful market rate
Mhm.
apartment building that has like a huge waiting list. So I think there's some pretty high rents there, but it has started a transformation of their main street quite a bit.
Well, and you know, the thing about North St. Paul, just as a quick planning aside, is it's already a really walkable space. It's a
Right.
true downtown. And so anything you can do to leverage that as an asset is gonna have significant value increase for the county and for the city, so.
Okay, so it was one major project that did that. Got it.
It was just in that 5-year period. And the other thing I'll just say as an aside, Commissioner Ortega, is that in that 5-year period, we were also dealing with the pandemic. So that's some really impressive growth
Right.
in that 5-year period. So these are the pieces that we pulled out of the model that are suburban municipalities and are particularly productive between the 2020 and 2025 model. So we looked at Little Canada, North St. Paul, White Bear Lake, and Roseville. And we wanted to kind of zero in on a couple of these and show you the average taxable value per acre in these 4 suburban communities. So you can see how this stacks up. They're all doing really well. Little Canada is a much smaller city and with a much smaller opportunity for mixed use and commercial development. So it's nice that it's kind of keeping pace with its larger brothers and sisters here. And then I would just say that this is the productivity ratio. Again, Little Canada keeping pace with these, but North St. Paul is the winner on this one. And again, largely because of that project. Taxable versus exempt in these 4 communities. We did this quick breakdown for you. White Bear Lake has a fairly significant amount of tax exempt property. They also have a lot of water. We didn't map that for White Bear Lake, but we know that, right? And then this is the total population for these communities. So Little Canada and North St. Paul, 2 of the smallest cities you have, are really, really doing well, really being productive and very potent.
Quick question on the tax exempt properties, because I know we've received data from the team. I believe that 14% of properties in Ramsey County is tax exempt. And I know in your data it says 24%. So I'm trying to understand like what additional things is included in your category of tax exempt that we would not include in ours.
I'm not sure all those others are.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, we'll get back to you on that one. I think there is in part because when we talk about 14%, we think about it as taxable, like areas of taxable acreage. So it's things like buildings and land uses that are, you know, parks, maybe where parked buildings are, but not necessarily parks,
Mhm.
right? So I think there is a distinction. This is where things can kind of
Yeah.
easily,
Mhm.
the numbers can easily kind of tell different stories, but I think between, as you kind of are presented different versions, the story is the same though. We have a much higher concentration of tax exempt parcels almost on every single indicator. So whether that is things that have buildings or things that are natural, or things that are right of way, or things that are lakes,
Right.
we have a lot of it. We're kind of the leader on almost every
I
category.
do want to stress one thing that was done at the start of the presentation here is, although our composition of taxable to tax exempt properties may be like that of other capital communities across the nation, in terms of the percentage, what is unique is our tax structure and our significant dependence on property tax in comparison to many of those other communities, as was exhibited in that one of those initial slides. And so it's good to see the kind of composition from a land use perspective, but when you control for the dependency factor, that's when it can become like pretty harmful to our economy.
Right, I got you.
Because it is a sole source. Sorry.
Yeah, no, this is back to, that's an important point. I don't want to step on that at all. As we go through some of these too, in different presentations and different times that we gather information, I guess the base is the issue, right? Is it a parcel? Is it a property? Is it acreage? Like, what are we using as the?
I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner. We analyze at the parcel level. And what I was thinking, Commissioner McMurtry, is that maybe the difference was between a parcel and an acreage percentage. And so we'll chase that down, but I think that might be the smoking gun here, is that's the difference.
Well, and the reason why I asked that is because, this is really powerful information. But statistics is its whole level of literacy that these all slides go beyond pretty everybody in this room except for a handful of people, right? And I know that's why we're gonna ask a bunch of questions. But what we don't want is people to dismiss something that they can't understand.
That's
So we need to be able to tell the story clearly.
Right, we're very careful about the liars figure and figures lie problem.
Yeah.
And so we always want our data to be consistent and clear. And if something isn't, you should ask, and I appreciate that actually. And this is just your roll up. We use this monopoly analogy here. And this is what those parcels are. These are the really productive parcels in each of these communities. You're probably familiar with them. There's article number 7 in the lower right. The lodge was developed back in the mid-2000s. Rice Street. And the Oasis opened during the pandemic, and that's up in the old Twin Lakes redevelopment area. So you probably are familiar with that. Brickhouse Food and Drink, there it is, super productive little parcel. And that's how these little lasting value parcels are. So you'll see a few more of those in future slides here. All right, so again, this is your value per acre comparison between 2020 and 25 for downtown North St. Paul. There you go. And we did want to show you a couple of examples of what's happening here. So you might be wondering, well, why is a parcel very productive and the ones around it are not? Or what's the difference here between all these parcels? This is a very typical big box store. So one of the reasons that we use big box store as a data point in our work nationally is because the construction and planning of these is very consistent. So corporate America likes to build the same thing on the same parcel over and over and over again. So it makes it really helpful for us to have a comparison anywhere in the United States. So this could be literally anywhere. This is a 22-acre parcel, and it's got that classic big box on it. And this is the current value, about $1 million per acre. What if we add some parking, which it does not need, but what if we add some parking here? Then we get down to about 700,000. If we subtract parking, we double the value of the parcel. So this is just a kind of quick reminder that parking dilutes value. Parking is typically taxed at a much lower rate. And it's typically, we see this throughout the country, typically these sites are overparked. They have more parking than they need.
Yeah, that's true.
So we looked at your Walmart in Vadnais and in Roseville. These are pulling 700,000 to 1.2 million per acre. I will tell you the reason Roseville does better is because it has fewer parking spaces. And actually the city of Roseville, and Carrie, were you there then? Yes, you didn't require as much parking. So look what happened. There you go. So just hold on to that 900,000 per acre. That's the average between these two. We're just going to look at a couple of examples in the model. This is just an example of what missing middle housing is, because I think we throw this term around a lot in the United States, and I'm not sure we always have a common or shared understanding about it. So we like to ground our audience in this image so that we understand. We're talking about these things that are duplexes up to fourplexes, larger homes that have been subdivided, shared wall townhomes, courtyard apartments, that kind of thing. Okay, that's missing middle. And actually, St. Paul and Ramsey County have quite a bit of this. And let's look at a little bit of your single family residential, your Walmart again, pulling about 900,000 per acre. Average value on your single family, about 1.4 million per acre, very respectable. You're missing middle residential, so you get everything from these townhomes in North St. Paul down to the duplex. We call them a townhome, but this is more like a row home, pulling 24 million an acre in St. Paul. So of a wide variety of types of housing. And then we looked at multifamily. You've got the Maplewood apartments, which were built in the probably 60s, and the Isaac apartments, which are new in Roseville and Twin Lakes, and the Boatwork Commons in White Bear Lake. White Bear Lake, extremely productive project there, not only because it's on the lake, but because it's a really compact development. And then we looked at multifamily residential in the county. We looked at Cretan Court. This is a classic 1920s courtyard building in St. Paul, the Ansel Residences in Shoreview, which is sort of a modern analog to that. Then we looked at the Point, and we looked at the Minnesota Building Apartments. And I wanted to note that the Minnesota building was a 4D project, so there would be some impact on property tax for that parcel in terms of revenue. But that helps you achieve other goals. So just wanted to note that. And the Point is owner occupied primarily, though there are rental units in that building. And then we wanted to show you some downtown housing. So the Arlo, which is new, approximately X, Penfield, which is up on 94, the Custom House, Landmark Towers, which just converted to housing in the last 2 years, and then the Lowry building, which has been condos for many years now. That's just a really quick survey, kind of a windshield survey of Ramsey County in terms of your values. And this is the roll-up slide. So your multifamily pulling about 3.8 million per acre. We also dug into your big box commercial and your commercial and mixed use. Again, we wanted to look at a Costco. That's always an interesting, again, nationally, we see a very similar type of land use here. Costco tends to be heavily parked, but they also tend to turn their parking very quickly. And so this is pulling just under 1 million an acre. The Target doing a little better, a little more compact development. Wanted to show you that in more of a planometric visual here, so you can see the Costco has a lot more parking, and that's again diluting the value of that parcel. We also looked at this, please.
One quick question.
It might be the same one.
Just for clarification, when it comes to determining the size of parking lots in kind of that zone, that's something that is controlled by the local
By the
city.
city.
Okay, just wanted to
That's
confirm
right.
that.
Yeah,
Got
the
it.
regulation of the number of spaces and the size of the spaces, yes.
Gotcha.
And then follow up to that would be, given that you had started off with the big box real estate, like to build the same thing over and over and over again.
Right.
What kind of negotiation position would a town be to take on, who wants Costco into their area to say, but we're gonna limit your parking, and they say, well, then we'll go down the street. How, what's how does that play out?
Yeah. I'm gonna defer to Carrie on that question, 'cause you've done
It
it.
is a significant negotiation. So I'll tell you, in terms of back at Roseville, I remember this very vividly, that they were challenging our parking ordinance because it was more so, we wanted to break up impervious or, from a greenscaping perspective. I remember there needed to be a landscaping kind of segment, a green kind of 1 for 9 spaces. And I remember that because it was quite a back and forth in terms of whether or not they were going to seek a variance for that. And ultimately, they just kind of threw their hands up and said, fine. Reducing the parking because we were trying to allow for stronger stormwater, capture.
Right.
And so that feeds into it. I do want to make one note, however, on the Costco, they do typically have a filling station component.
Right.
And so that would probably impact the value per acre a bit. But that's also probably why you're seeing that wraparound concept, maybe.
Yeah, it's
Not
actually,
sure.
the filling station, I think, is in the corner.
The corner.
Yeah, and it's
The
kind of a weird one, but yes, you're absolutely right. That does impact their parking needs sometimes. So.
I'll just say, as a Costco shopper who is
Yeah.
close to Maplewood, that lot is full more than it is not.
Yes, it is. It's consistently full and it's, not my favorite Costco because of that. All right.
Yeah, you drove in and drove right out on Sunday. 'cause it
Wow.
was so busy.
That's impressive. That's impressive. I usually
Yeah.
go to Egan, so.
Yeah.
Other, Mr. Chair and Commissioners, you know, the one thing that we wanted to do to show you this, and I failed to mention this kind of at the beginning of the presentation. You know, when we presented this information back in 2020, it was our job. We thought it was a good opportunity to kind of insert a new set of metrics that cities can incorporate into their decision making. Because in this instance, tax revenues are great, right? Like any development sometimes is good development. But it also begins to ask the question, especially of like community development staff and how you embed yourselves into those ordinances, how you can, I don't want to use the word extract, but how you can ask for more, how you can kind of create more value that at the end of the day creates more to the bottom line. And I think what you're seeing in a lot of these examples are new projects that I don't want to say go out too far on a limb and say we influence them to make better decision making, because that's probably a limb too far. But I will say, I think that information we shared with communities who maybe have not been thinking about that, their planning commissions, their city councils, this is kind of uplifting and kickstarting new thinking, and we've been seeing it. And so I just wanted to insert that, just because a lot of those examples that you're seeing there are a lot of new examples that have shown up in the last 5 years. And the sophistication of staff, the sophistication of tools has a lot to do with that.
We'll take Commissioner DeBoer and then we'll get back to presentation.
Just to put a exclamation point on that, Little Canada is so proud of the development that they've done. And they've done it in conjunction with Ramsey County. That was their main goal. Let's develop our little city. And they talked about it at their annual meeting a few weeks ago, about how that was a really conscious effort for them to be in development. They hired a city manager just for that reason. And they really made it a priority, and with help from all of us, they did this. So it was fun to see that up there. They're very proud of it, and it's a great little city that could. I mean, they did a lot. I think Brighton wants to be up there next. Brighton wants to be up there.
Oh, they can get there, absolutely.
Yeah,
I think I will just say as a quick aside too, I think it's helpful for you and your constituents to understand the economics of land use. And that certain land uses do not provide adequate revenue. They do not pay for themselves. And I think that's why a more data-driven sort of, if you will, a little more scientific approach to this is really helpful, because it helps to kind of set the table for a deeper conversation. All right, so getting back to the malls, you've got in Ramsey County, we looked at Maplewood and Rosedale. And you can see, you might think, these look pretty similar in terms of acreage and sort of layout. The big difference between these two is that Rosedale has a lot more structured parking. And so this is where surface parking is really diluting the value at Maplewood. So this isn't about Maplewood being active enough or well tenanted. That's not what this slide tells you. This slide really tells you that in terms of land use, Rosedale is using its land in a more productive way. Okay, but I want to show you something kind of interesting. You know that over the last, say, decade or so, because we all shop there, that mall has started to think about using its outlots, right?
Oh my gosh.
So one of the malls that we also compared it to is Harmar. And the joke in economic development circles is that Harmar shouldn't work, and yet here we are. It's kind of a little mall that could, and it just keeps cooking along, just keeps being fairly productive, right?
It does.
Kind of amazing.
It is amazing.
I know, we're all kind of like, I don't get it, but okay. And so there it is compared to Rosedale. But then we said, well, what about the OG? So Southdale, is the original, right?
All right.
And Southdale, just the mall today, would be worth 2.1 million value per acre. But what they started to do in the last decade was develop those out parcels. And they developed them not just as a commercial use, but as a residential use. And so they've increased the value of Southdale per acre by $1 million in the last decade. Pretty significant. So what if you did that with a bunch of these, right? So there's these really interesting conversations that this prompts, thinking differently about how we're utilizing land. And this would be example, for instance, of where you might say a redevelopment that had included structured parking would be a better use, it would be a more productive use, right? Those are very hit or miss in terms of your ability to predict that. There are tools you can use for that, and I think that's part of the conversation that can happen with your suburban partners here. But you can just see, these are some of the usual suspects in Ramsey County. So you got McCarran and Rosedale Square and Lexington Plaza. Lexington Plaza is the one across the street from where the Keys is, just to orient you to that. And then Falcon Crossing in Falcon Heights, which is the highest value parcel. Look at that.
Oh my God.
Gotta love that.
Yeah.
All right, and then we looked at smaller scale commercials, so we kind of looked at St. Paul, White Bear Lake, and North St. Paul. Your specialty floral, that $3.5 million value per acre parcel up there on the left, the Mandalay Kitchen, awesome restaurant. And Lake Country Booksellers down on White Bear Lake, 0.7, 0.9 million per acre. So really productive, small scale commercial buildings throughout your model. We wanted to show you Grand Avenue. Grand Avenue gets a lot of press right now. This is the fully tenanted section of Grand Avenue. This is the part of Grand Avenue that is still doing really well in terms of properties that are full and are active, right? So this is adjacent to McAllister.
Yeah, we can, yeah.
And it's bookended by the Patagonia on the left and Fratelloni's on the right. And so that's your value per acre on this section of Grand Avenue. And this is your downtown office buildings, First National Bank there at 9.8 million, Alliance Bank 22, and the Lawson, formerly known as the Lawson, at 48.3, and the Osborne 370 at 16.9. Then we looked at mixed use buildings throughout the counties. We looked at St. Paul, North St. Paul. We looked at the Fitzpatrick, which is a new renovation, rehab. I believe that was a historic tax credit project. And then a bunch of what we would think of as lasting value properties. So these are properties that were built around the turn of the last century, probably through the 1920s. The Fitzpatrick is even older than that. That's probably from the 1890s. Very productive parcels. These are the parcels I really wanted to show you today. These are the infill parcels that are occurring throughout St. Paul in particular right now, and are proving to be extremely productive land uses for you. So the two times, the Golden Time Cafe and the Golden Time Restaurant and Bar, very productive infill parcels. These sit on a couple of residential lots. And then in the lower left, you've probably driven by this, but you didn't realize what it was. This, we called it apartments because it sort of is apartments. It took a single family home, subdivided into 2 units, added an ADU and a garage ADU for 4 units on this site. This is a single family residential parcel.
Wow.
And it is pulling 6.6 million per acre.
Wow.
Everything around it is pulling closer to $1.4 million per acre. So it's a massive improvement in terms of productivity.
How many units?
4, we think.
Just
in that. We think there are 4, but that first building, the building that fronts Laurel, could be more units. That could be like a 3-plex. I'm not sure, I haven't been in it.
Yeah.
And if maybe y'all know.
Max will probably know.
Max, no, okay. Max on, yeah.
Say 4+.
Well,
Plus.
I don't know how it's structured legally, so anyway, we didn't dig into that, but we were impressed by the land use aspect of that.
One more question.
Yeah.
Oh, I just wanted to say, that's also in a historic district too.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yeah,
So
yeah.
it's very possible.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So really kind of a fun project, and one that we show this nationally because it is so groundbreaking. So well done, St. Paul. All right. And then we wanted to show you your peak parcels. So these are your winners. Again, Galtier at 100.5 million per acre, very, very productive. Commerce and Minnesota Building. So those are your peak parcels. And the Minnesota Building was your peak parcel in 2020. So that's just a quick callback to that. This is your roll up. These are the average value per acre for all your properties in the county. The multifamily residential is the most productive. That we would typically see mixed use or multifamily residential is the most productive. Wanted to give you a quick look. There's the Ham, beautiful building that's now converting to housing, pulling 6.6 million per acre. I understand that's going to be affordable too. The conversion is affordable, which is great. This is your Osmond and Kirk building. This is an old warehouse. This pulls 12.4 million per acre in Lower Town. And that's one of the first artist lofts buildings in the state back in the 70s. So still very productive parcel too. And this is a little downtown North St. Paul,
Cute.
just killing it. Look at that.
Man, are they?
So impressed with North St. Paul.
And you could go there on a Friday,
I know.
I mean, in the summer, you can see cars just like that. We can recreate it. Yeah.
Downtown, and there's a great cat shelter there.
And a bingo.
Right, and bingo. All right, well, North St. Paul is the hotspot. Okay. So this is your roll up. This is the whole shooting match here. And this is your lower density to mixed use and then higher density mixed use and commercial. So this is just a roll up slide showing you some selected parcels in their average value per acre that they're pulling right now. And this is what it looks like in your chart. All right. Wow. And those higher density parcels obviously are more productive. We would expect to see that. We're gonna zip through this really quickly. This is your land value per acre. You can see a bunch of your parcels that are popping up here at 0, like Rice Creek Commons, because it is not developed yet.
We're working on it.
No.
We'll get there. Check back in 5 years. 5 years will be all, tall.
Come back in 5 years.
That's right. Oh, I will. Then, here's the land value per acre in an extruded map. Yes, was there?
Commissioner John?
I was just wondering if in this analysis, would you, did you look at where transit corridors are?
Good question.
I'm so glad you asked about that. We did not in this phase of analysis. And we would love to do that because we did a project in Indianapolis a couple of years ago and looked at that, and it is fascinating. I think you would really enjoy seeing the impact of TOD. Yeah, so
Yeah.
happy to send you a couple of images from that.
Yeah, I would say like just as we are embarking on our ECI plan.
Yeah,
I know like we should consider looking at where we have invested in transit already, right? The Green Line, Gold Line, yeah. And
What's the
Gold
comment?
Line, yeah.
And a nuance to that would be the trade-off between if any of that and the right of way. You know, I mean, the
Use of
push,
right of way.
pull of that, right?
Yes, yeah,
Mm,
absolutely.
good point.
So using existing infrastructure, right, yeah. Great. And this is your total roll up, your average land value per acre countywide, 315. And then just kind of looking at a specific site. We wanted to show you a couple of things that these are just interesting. And we do this kind of, we call this a lanyard. It's like a small gift we're giving you. We wanted to show you this comparison. Virtually identical, very different value per acre, primarily because of how these are being assessed. So significant opportunity. Just gonna leave you with that.
Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah.
So not that.
Well, our assessor need to go check it out.
So you have a regular assessment cycle, right, in terms of your evaluation of buildings. And invariably, again, you're not unique, every community misses a few. But we find them because they kind of jump off the map at us. So these are the ones we found where you've got a disconnect, right? In this case, this building at 722 grand, while we are comparing it to a commercial building, it still shouldn't be that much of a difference. This one is a little bit more, let me go back here. This one's a little more striking.
Yeah.
Um,
Actually, I lived along.
Did you?
While I was in grad school.
I did too. It's funny. I lived across the street from these. Isn't that wild? Yeah. So these are kind of classic, like, I think these are like 9 units. The one I lived in was a 4 unit, but yeah, I mean, these are pretty classic. These should be pretty consistent across your assessment role.
That's
Um,
big
one
difference.
super
Updated, like one isn't super modernized or anything,
One,
I mean.
we'd be interesting to dig into those. You can
Yeah.
see that maybe somebody's done significant investment in one. It could be that it just hasn't been reevaluated in a few years. Yeah, so there's a number of reasons.
I'm just saying, no,
Yeah.
no for our open book meetings.
Yeah,
Somebody's gonna be
exactly.
coming from this neighborhood. Check it out.
Just interesting. I just leave you with that. It's just a little lanyard, just a little gift. Okay. And then really quickly, you did your sales tax analysis this time. And want to give you kind of a quick overview of LGA. We did this for Minnesota clients because LGA is kind of, I wouldn't say it's a unique program in the United States, but it is not a typical program. And so we like to kind of give you an idea of sort of what's happening for you legislatively in terms of your needs versus how your current aid level is meeting those needs. And so, again, we leave you with this. There's a kind of opportunity here, I think, for conversation with your state legislators around this.
Have you factored in county program aid with that too?
we did not
Okay.
factor in county program aid. We were just looking at LG.
Not LGA, which is the city aid, so not right county aid.
And then, just wanting to kind of quickly zip through these, this is your property tax revenue per acre, your sales tax revenue per acre, and then both. So still 86% of your revenue is coming from property tax, but that sales tax revenue is really important now. And this is a kind of a new thing, right?
Yeah, so the question I have is with the sales tax revenue, this is where it's generated, right? But do
Yes.
we know where it's originating from? Meaning, are these people who are coming from other places to spend their dollars in Ramsey County? Are these people from one part of the county coming to spend their dollars somewhere else? Do we have any
Yes.
way of?
Yes, and yes.
Okay.
So, not to be too, flippant about it, but what we do is we get an aggregated number.
Mhm.
Some of that we can assign to a parcel specifically because it's like IKEA in Rosedale and they spent this much money, right? And some of them are online purchases that we have to synthetically assign to a parcel.
Okay.
So it's a variety of sources where you see the most sort of, you see let me go back a slide here. Look, you can see Grand Avenue. You can see 94, you can see downtown, you can see Rosedale. So sometimes we can see very clearly that the sales tax is being generated in a bricks and mortar retail situation or property that's generating sales tax. In other cases, we have to assign it to parcels throughout the county based on zip code or other data that we have. So that's how we do that.
And then the second part of that, do we have any way of knowing who is actually paying the sales tax? Is it our own residents, or because it's attached to these places, we can assume that so we have no idea who's actually paying the sales tax?
I don't believe the state collects that data.
Okay.
Now, I'd be happy to be corrected on that, but I don't think that when you swipe your Visa, they know your zip code and they know where you're coming from.
Somebody does.
Somebody does. Visa knows for sure. But I'm not sure the state is tracking.
Yeah, and that's fine. I just didn't know if that was kind of a general assumption that when we have retail generating places or service generating places that generate taxes, that we have a general sense of it's people who are coming here, shop destination, and so it's not necessarily the people in Roseville who are paying for the taxes that are generated out of
Buying
Rosedale.
power.
Buying
Yeah.
Yeah, and Mr. Chair and Commissioners, so as Heather was saying, we asked us to kind of insert this because, of the bar graph, it's becoming more and more part of the picture.
Yeah.
Very different from where we were in 2020, where sales tax was not really kind of a line item on that piece. Certainly the type of sales tax and where it goes to also is important, right? We have a housing sales tax, we have a transportation sales tax. Those are things that this board, this, organization obviously has a really key piece to play, but also begins to kind of help us inform us on the economic development side. Do we need to be asking more in-depth questions around the dynamics of sales tax? In other communities where, Heather knows this well because she works with a lot of communities that are high sales tax generator. I used to work for one of them in Colorado where there was a fight for those retail sales tax users because that was your generator of revenue for your community. And so the fights were really, the corner, one community would be fighting over it and offering tax breaks, and it became really dicey. And the reason, I don't want to take us down that pathway, but I would just like to point out, we didn't really have that. We don't have that information at our fingertips. Like what's the leakage is the sometimes in retail talks about how much is going to other communities, how much are we pulling in? And so I think this represents a new opportunity for us as we think about the ECI plan. What other things should we be asking ourselves? What our community should be asking about as we think about kind of a comprehensive economic development strategy? Because in this case, sales tax is now definitely a part of the question and the equation.
As we think about the next phase of the ECI plan, is there a goal of, let's say, in the next 5 or 10 years that we want to see, that sales tax double? Like what are we thinking through specific numbers as to what we wanna hopefully see that get to in the next decade or so?
That's a very good question. I don't know if I have the answer to it quite yet, Commissioner, but yes.
Commissioner, I think that's all part of this next iteration, is to say, now that we understand the composition, I think what you'll find through our assessors data is that our downtown is really lacking commercial. And so I think we can make some strides in terms of influencing land use. So for example, vertical mixed use, where possible, how can we get some commercial in there? How can we diversify the land use portfolio? And then through our assessment data too, we learned industrial is performing really well from a valuation perspective. So how do we continue to kind of grow opportunities for us to dispose of underutilized county land and then create opportunities for industrial, commercial? But then there's another layer, and I know we'll get to the next step slide, and here's the fiscal disparities piece, and that's for another day. But that also demonstrates how multifamily residential from a variety of variables outperforms that of other land uses. And all of that can inform a strategy for the next 5 to 10 years.
There is,
So, I don't, sorry, you're in first, so Raphael and then Barry.
so Heather, let me add, this is just my observation, but given what you said, I'm sort of putting pieces there. Post-COVID. Pre-COVID, St. Paul was just cooking. I mean, it was vibrant.
Yeah.
And post-COVID, it started heading into trouble. Meanwhile, I'm thinking to meet a competitor for St. Paul, let's say, in terms of sales tax, is more Western Wisconsin. The mayor of Hudson is a former Ramsey County Commissioner that served with me. And so just getting the information and the growth they've been going through, I'm trying to figure out in my head now, they have higher property taxes than us, I believe. And a lower sales tax. So I'm trying to reconcile, if I'm correct, that with this.
So I think and I was gonna mention this earlier, I can't remember which one of you asked about, I think it was you, Commissioner Singh, I think it was this question about where did the expenditure come from, right? And I think this is sort of linked to your question, Commissioner Ortega, which is commuter data. So we can analyze inbound, outbound commuter data. So that would be daytime hours, we could look at evening hours, we can look at a lot of different data sets there. That's where I think we get at this question of, were you from Hennepin County spending money at Rosedale? Did you come from Hudson? And you bypassed Woodbury, which would be a little surprising, right? So those are the kind of more granular details we can get at. And the thing I will say about sales tax data, it is very uneven across the United States. There are some states that will not give us data at all. And we have to do a full synthetic model of their sales tax. We just have a number and then we have to kind of assign it. Here we have a little bit better data. We're doing Rochester right now too. And what I think would be really great is if you all would ask the state to make those data sets more accessible and more transparent. There's a little bit of hide the ball going on. So that would be my suggestion for y'all.
Do we need legislation for that, or can we just ask them for it?
I think it could start as I'm not gonna tell you how to do this, Jen can tell you how to do this, but I think you start as a conversation.
Okay.
And say like, here's what we're trying to achieve, and then maybe it does need legislation.
Okay, that's great, start. When you're talking about sales tax, are you talking local option sales tax as well? Because I know like we have a hotel tax in Roseville that I think stays in Roseville, right?
I think so, yeah, that's all
most of it.
visitors.
It's for the Oval, but okay.
Yeah, so this would be all those local options.
And that's included in all these, that's included in the sales tax number?
Yes, this would include all of those local options, your half cents.
Okay.
Yeah, not the old transit money though, right? I don't think that's in here, but let me double check that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So different communities have different.
not to go down that rabbit hole, but yeah.
Right, okay, just curious.
Before we get to Commissioner, we just want to get a sense of how much left of your presentation.
I'm in the home stretch here.
Okay. Okay.
So I will wrap it up and then plenty of time for questions. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, can you go back one slide where it just shows the sales tax? Okay, so if we look at that, I wanna note what Commissioner Jean said about the transit line, because that's really important to see. I just think of, I'd expect to see more sales tax along transit lines for some of our families, or you can even see kind of like in North St. Paul and White Bear Lake, like those are obviously people that are driving, because there is no transit there. Two, do we have an idea of time frame of when in either of these for like the sales tax, like, do we know when, like, is it a season or is it like, you know, big events that drive people into the city or drive people to North St. Paul or even White Bear Lake, right? Like, are there, you know, trends that we're seeing that even if it's just people coming in for events, right?
Yeah, we would have to analyze the traffic commuter data for that.
Oh, okay,
This is all 2025.
okay,
So this is last year. This is the
Okay.
total for last year. Yeah, that's what this data set is.
Okay.
So, I mean, we can do a deeper analytical model here. We would just have to pull in some of that other data.
yeah,
But yes, we could do that.
And that same thing would be interesting, service versus goods,
yeah,
you
Yeah,
know, like,
exactly.
is it
Yeah.
hotel retail, is it
Right,
hotel
yeah.
restaurant, or is it retail?
And that's a really good question
Yeah.
because I'm not sure the state's tracking it
Other-
in that granular fashion. So that's again, a question I think for your legislative staff to ask your members at the state about.
And just, and I also wanna say to nuance, right? I mean, all of this is nuance, so like White Bear. As a downtown, it's a destination, so
Right.
is it, you know, you might say the bookshop is as much a coffee shop as it is, meaning it's
Sure.
a destination place, somebody's wandering in.
Absolutely.
They're not spending buying that book there instead of Barnes and Noble or Amazon because of, well, it is a charming bookstore, I love the
Right.
owners there, but it's also the destination of, you're going to that town.
Yeah.
Into that town for.
Yeah,
for the
I will
reason.
drive out there to go to Sheepy Yarn Shop. Yes, I. will.
Yeah.
So I mean, you know,
Yeah.
that's.
Just to put a bow on this slide.
Yarn is-
So these two big spikes in
Yeah.
North St. Paul and White Bear Lake, because I
Yeah.
think Roseville doesn't have any spikes, so I'm
Yeah.
just curious, because we have a huge retail in Roseville.
It's pretty
But we
thick
don't have
though, look
spikes.
at it. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
pretty
no.
thick. It's not very spiky.
It's not spiky, so that just means that there's
It's
two.
just more productive on that parcel.
Okay,
well,
Yeah,
and they have it's two different as well, like, they feel more downtowny, right? Like
Yeah.
North St. Paul is
Yeah.
really downtowny.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And White Bear Lake is that destination downtowny, like you can park, you can wander and walk, yeah.
I think Commissioner Miller, you just nailed it. I think that's the
Yeah.
difference is that those little downtowns, those classic little
It's like 2
downtowns are really
Yeah.
productive.
Yeah,
Okay.
and that's
And
Hudson
Hudson
too.
Yeah, that's right. And still.
Yeah.
So it's not just one place,
No.
that's a downtown that's spiking up,
downtown.
where we're spread out, because we're not one
Exactly.
One more and then we'll get back
Well,
to.
and we're geeking out on this too, but.
That's
yeah,
good.
yeah,
Just curious.
To my question of service
Look at
versus
it.
goods, there's a lot of goods that aren't taxable, and a mall would be full of clothes
Yeah.
and other whole
Yeah.
things. So you're thinking about
Yeah.
it, mixing.
Right,
Yeah.
exactly. So I think Rosedale probably, that's probably another reason. Because we didn't really get into that level of granularity, but we could, because I think again, if the data exists,
You could look
we
at
can
it.
slice and dice it and look at it and
North
correlate
St.
it to
Paul,
land use.
Paul has a lot of that,
There's a lot of what?
a lot of
A
bars.
lot of bars in North St.
I
Paul.
love it.
Now you know where they are. Okay, all right, moving on. All right. So I wanted to just look to this conversation. Let me compare Harmar and Grand Avenue. So this is our little friend on Grand Avenue, the Patagonia to Fratallone's, as I like to think of it. And you can see Harmar's sitting on 42 acres. Our little Grand Avenue friends are sitting on. Oh my goodness.
Oh.
Harmar's generating about 830,000 compared to our friends on Grand Avenue, 175, but that sales tax revenue on Grand Avenue, it's not just the Patagonia, right?
No.
Because Patagonia isn't charging tax because it's clothing. Interesting. And
Yeah,
there you go, there's your property tax per revenue. So Grand Avenue is winning. Yeah, but you know, Harmar could be too, so could be. All right, growth projections really quickly. Let's not leave Harmar out because, and I took out my Harmar superstar slide, but.
I don't
know
think
who's
it's
saying
over there, but.
they're holding their own.
They're holding on, and they're looking at flyers. They're still always looking.
Right, they're always looking.
They're always
So these were this is what we called your land use portfolio. This is the types of uses that you have in your portfolio, okay? And we wanted to look at 3 sites specifically. So your team identified these 3 sites and we did what we call a projection. So what could that site be in the future if you thought differently about that as a land use, okay? And these are the three we looked at. We looked at Les Bolstad. You probably know that that's coming back to the city of Falcon Heights. It has been a U of M property for a long time, right, Commissioner McGuire? And then downtown St. Paul, and then we looked at Maplewood. So these are the three sites. So let's start with Les Bolstad. This is the golf course on Lavender Avenue. It's right next to your Gibbs Farm. This is where we just did a simple projection based on the city of Falcon Heights' current land use regulation, their zoning. And we show you could take it from 0, it's exempt today, up to 6 million. This is a very conservative estimate in terms of the projection for this site. It is not specific. I want to be really clear about this for our friends who might be listening from Falcon Heights. This is not about specific land uses. This is just about intensifying the use of that property and making it a more productive land use, okay? And we use these examples within your current existing model as examples of these types of uses that could go there. The townhomes in Falcon Heights are on the southeast corner, the lodge at Little Canada on Rice, and the apartments there at Laurel and Western. Not Western, Dale, there we go. I had a little moment where I was like, no, that's Dale. Okay, then we looked at downtown. And these were a couple of office to residential conversion studies that Gensler did, and were these done from Downtown Council?
Downtown Alliance.
Downtown Alliance, excuse me, thank you. So First National and Gallery Professional at 17 Exchange, you're familiar with both of these properties. Again, we looked at current value per acre and projected value per acre, again, based on the Gensler study. So they were looking at these conversions to a residential use from a commercial use. And that's again, a very conservative projection at 18.5 million. And then we looked at Maplewood. We're looking here at your campus. So this includes certain portions of your campus in Maplewood on White Bear Lake, or White Bear Avenue, excuse me. And again, we used the lodge, we used our little Grand Avenue examples and our duplex example from St. Paul as the types of uses that could go there, generating up to a projected 7.5 million per acre from a 0 today. Again, these are very conservative. These are very kind of, let's just take a high level view of this, right? Yeah, the barn is there.
Is that the barn? I mean, that's where the barn is, or Aldridge Arena. I mean, that's the.
Yes, yeah, that goes all the way from Aldridge Arena to the barn and into Sparks. Yeah,
No.
so that's that. We called it the Maplewood campus.
Oh.
So it could go from this current to those projected sites. So significant increase in value, and then we just did a quick roll up for you. And this just shows, a couple of these parcels don't generate anything right now, like down the Les Bolstad Golf Course. It's not generating anything downtown. More than it almost doubles and a little bit more. And then Maplewood, again, significant increase there.
Which side is this, the Maplewood one?
The Maplewood is where the barn is.
Oh,
And the
And
Parks
Aldridge.
campus, Aldridge, that's that. It's on White Bear.
It doesn't take into account Aldridge though, because we are keeping Aldridge.
Yeah, I don't want
Yeah.
to start. something.
Right, yeah, don't start something. Yeah, I mean.
That was just
I mean, Aldridge stays because we're.
anything you decide. to
Aldridge.
do. Exactly.
Good,
Very, very deeply agnostic about what you decided.
Good thing you're going.
So I want to get my friend Josh in trouble.
Commissioner, if I might add to, that's a tax revenue perspective. That doesn't take into account the residential growth that would aid sales tax as well. So just a note on that.
Balancing act,
Yeah.
right? And also, I just will say, my disclaimer on all this is, let's say you decide to do affordable housing and use 4D on it, right? You will forego some property tax revenue, but you're achieving another value. So again, it's about trade-offs, right? It's about constantly rebalancing your portfolio. As I was saying to the commissioner earlier, you don't have all your retirement stocks in AI. So don't put all your stocks in single family, right? Because that's the idea here.
And, sorry, and picking up on the conversation we had before the meeting too, which is if you're single family homes. I think you had said something about how single family homes will never actually pay for themselves.
They don't really pay their way.
In
In terms of the taxes they generate for the community, but the services they use.
And yet, to the point, we would never develop our whole county with, you know,
And what it
without
is.
single family homes, because you need
Right.
a place for your residents. to
Right,
live,
right.
You know, or a mix of places
Right.
for residents to live, and so it's, to your point, it's that balancing of the, what are you designing for your community and how do you achieve it?
There you go.
So this is so fascinating. I love it. I mean, I want you to do deeper analysis on lots of things. So how are we talking to our cities about this, you know, and we have a lot of developments going on, you know. Commissioner Jevonsing and I are heading into a JDA, Joint Development Authority meeting tonight, you know, for Rice Creek County. You know, I want all my cities to hear this, because so many cities, they love single family homes, you know. And they love, you know, they love all these things that don't necessarily, you know, balance out or pay their way. And so we're always talking to them about this, but some of our cities are like knowing this and they're doing the thing.
Yeah.
So I think all of our cities would love to hear this. So how are we talking to our partners about all of this? So.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Commissioner McGuire, great question. And I would just say, we've already started to talk to our cities all about this.
Yeah.
And they are now salivating over begging for a lot of this information so that they
Yeah.
can get into it.
That's
One,
sure.
they're heading into
Yeah.
comp plan time. And they'll need to be thinking about where are some areas of change, where are areas of new opportunity and growth. And so that for them, this data helps inform some of those decisions. You know, we did reach out to them, to Falcon Heights and to Maplewood, because we said, we want to ask this question. Hypothetical scenarios, I think in the case of Falcon Heights, a little bit more advanced than a hypothetical. It's, you know, they're in the midst of thinking about this and that will come. But we wanted to ask, you know, hypothetical questions, because this is kind of the things that are going to change in the next 5 years. There's going to be natural changes. I think Bolsted's there's going to be something that happens there. There's going to be, in the case of Parks Campus, this was just a hypothetical scenario to ask this question of like, there's going to be a natural look at tax exempt facilities that, you know, parking is underutilized, you know, 6 of the 7 days of the week, potentially. So how can we infuse some new opportunity for development? And what does that maybe get the cities? And so we asked, in this case, both cities had done guiding documents on both of those sites. So that's why we started there. Maplewood was already asking us about how much tax exempt parcels they have in their city. What can we do to kind of do a little bit more? Falcon Heights was asking, hey, can you help feed in some additional data that helps us inform what's going to come down, you know, our pipeline here very soon, to make good, you know, land use decisions. And so they're asking, but since we unveiled some of this in our economic development summit about a month or so ago, I've gotten requests from all of I mean, not all of our cities, but most of our cities asking, can we have our own presentation? Can we do a little deeper dive?
Yeah.
And I think we're prepared to do that and to support that, whether that is through the contractual relationship that we have with Urban 3 or helping to kind of do the grants that we have through our like critical quarters program, which is, you know, that's coming up soon. Later this spring, we'll have a planning grant program and we can say, hey, you want to do more? You know, here's a consultant who does this, but you can go a little deeper if you'd like.
Yeah.
Like Raphael, and then we'll let you finish up, and then
So
do any
John,
last questions.
when you're having that dialogue with the cities,
Mhm.
to what extent, because some of the feedback that I get from constituents, something that you said, and that is the preference is that we build single family homes.
Yeah. And part.
Part of it is cultural in terms of generational, my observation, and I don't know if it's true or not. But so how do cities look at this? Because it's their constituents that will be telling them, we don't want that 100-unit building.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, you know, I think.
Are they feeling that at all?
Yeah, and they're absolutely feeling it. And I would also say this analysis, while it has an undercurrent that speaks to, look at how great certain parts, you know, certain sites and how productive they are. I think it also illustrates even more gentle changes can update, can infuse more value into community, whether it is purely financial or inserting, commercial opportunities, new housing opportunities. And so I think that that's what I witnessed over the last 5 years is cities have brought this information into it. They know, North St. Paul knows they're not downtown St. Paul. So they're playing to their strengths, but what this analysis shows in the case of North St. Paul is what they're doing actually is spot on. Like how you add a little bit here and there can really see these peaks pop. How you can, take an underutilized parking lot in Roseville or, that long underutilized or vacant parcel and turn it into housing or commercial development matters. So like putting time and effort and trying to get those things up, to a much productive state will be the thing that begins to address, questions around community. But I would also say this is why we wanted to bring it to you all. This is areas where, whether it's us as a county or our cities who are doing this work, these are ways that definitely make impacts on property taxes. Addressing that and relieving the pressure, because as Heather showed in those images, we do have some areas where we've seen growth, but we've definitely seen reductions. Downtown St. Paul, which is supposed to be a growth engine, is not running at that same level like they were in 2020.
Wow, right. I'm gonna get to the end and then lots more time for questions. So now what? So you've seen all this data that we've crunched for you. And so I just want to leave you with a couple of ideas here. Look for examples of those productive places and replicate them. You know where these are. You have lots of infill opportunities. And to all the points you've all made today, if all you do is build a single family home on those, you're missing an opportunity. So just think about the infill opportunity, and in every one of your districts, there are those opportunities. And this is what that value growth can look like. Again, we're gonna pick on North St. Paul here, but in a good way, right? Look what they did. They grew their total value per acre by $91 million in a 5-year period, just by these couple of projects that were really productive projects.
Just really go back to that, because to Commissioner Ortega, to your point about the cities, so it is the article number 7, which is kind of the big hitting project, but Anchorview too, and you can see it was previously city owned. Our cities are feeling the crunch just as much as the county and getting really serious about their portfolio and their disposition as well, in the same way that we are. Like we've mentioned, City of Maplewood having that conversation with us saying, you county owned 12% of the city. We need to work, we're super constrained here. So it is a unique time to be having the presentation, sharing the data, and then together saying, now what? Sorry, Heather.
Oh, no, that's good. No, that's good. And it wasn't just that article number 7. I mean, there's the other productive parcel downtown is the Polar Lounge. And then this little mixed use building. So I mean, again, North St. Paul doing something right here, right?
Quick question for the North St. Paul piece. You saw in 2020, the exempt portion that city owned and that it now has the Anchorview apartments in the orange. What's the yellow? Is that also the apartments?
I don't specifically know what that is. I don't know what that parcel is. I'm sorry, Commissioner.
Okay.
It looks like it's part of that Anchorview Apartments parcel, but I wouldn't swear to that.
Gotcha.
It's something that's been developed. Yeah.
And just on the visual, these aren't actually super high rises.
No,
These
no,
are
no.
just land values.
No,
So it's just, I mean,
Yeah.
it almost looks like it's super high rises.
No,
It's
no.
not. These are lower,
No.
they're lower than that are.
Number 7 is.
Is it
10.
super?
100 stores.
90 stores.
Sorry.
You get me in trouble.
Sorry.
No, that's just a very productive.
Yeah, just a very productive, I mean, I'm looking at it like, oh, there's no way we're gonna have these many high rises, but they're not really high.
That's not,
I
no,
know.
that's not.
So what is obvious?
So I have one question. So the Anchorview apartments, could those be newer? Because when was Article 7 built? Because I know that there's newer apartments that just came online.
So those
What in the last year?
everything you see to the right was built in that 5-year period between 2020 and 2025. So if you look to the left, those parcels are vacant.
So I'm just trying to
Yeah.
picture the
And I don't know-
Anchorview or
yeah.
across the street, then right next to the
I know, and I drive that way like a couple times a year and I'm always like, oh, wait, where did that come from,
So
right?
they were building it,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's right next to the post office. So I'm
Right.
wondering if maybe they use some sort of tax credits on the yellow and that's why?
They could tell you, I don't know. And this is where my data is blind to that,
Okay,
because that would be contained in the development agreement.
okay.
And that is not public in
So
the,
and
in the
when,
data.
when we relook at this in a few years, it could be even higher
It
with
could
some
be
of
even
those
higher,
other
right? Because there could be
apartments.
some other parcels that get redeveloped,
Yeah.
right? So that's what you're seeing here is the difference between that image on the left and the right. It's the same area.
Yeah,
It's just that in that 5-year period, it developed significantly. And again, you can see, I mean, 91 million in additional value, so.
and they're kind of high, Mary Jo. They're like 6 feet.
I know, that's what I was just,
And
I don't like, we're gonna get that money.
this is downtown, you've already seen that, build, grow that Purple Mountain. These are the things that are really productive. This is infill. This is
Mhm.
prime infill type of uses. Work with your municipal partners, you all get this better than anybody I've ever met. But this is the opportunity in Maplewood, 14% of it's county owned, they have 24% tax exempt. And then we love our buddies at Strong Towns, and these are great books for you to consider, and we ask you do the math. Just like the count, do the math, it's all there for you. So that's it, I am done.
So I have
Happy
one
to hear
for assistant, as we look to how we grow our base and, you know, property taxes, sales taxes. And looking at within the cities is, for me, is like, you know, we can partner with our cities, but as a county, some things that we can do with our own properties that we have within those cities to create, you know, especially for those who are tax exempt and we're not generating any money at all, it's just sitting there or whatever. Find ways that as a county, what can we do to begin to generate more taxes?
Yeah.
Because we have the more power and leverage to do that.
Right, and Commissioner Moran, to your point, I think you can also think about how you're leveraging your investments that you make as a county in things like infrastructure.
Yes.
And so when you work with Met Council to put in a BRT line, how are you working with those communities to ensure there's good TOD in the future? So those are real, sort of those are leveraging opportunities.
We're gonna go with Mary Jo, then Mai Chung, then Laura.
Okay, just quickly, so we've been talking about, I'm glad this is a public meeting because I'm happy that people are hearing about all these opportunities. We're heading into the JDA meeting now, you know, we've been doing a lot of research on the property that we have up in our hills. And so they've heard all this and we're working with them on, I'm just curious, like, I would love to have the city and city council hear some of this information as well. Where are we at with that? Just curious.
I can jump in, Mr. Chair, Commissioner, I think, our cities haven't received the full robust presentation. They've received kind of an overview, if you will, at a prior economic development summit as almost a quasi teaser, if you will, for what may be a deeper dive into this work on a city by city basis. So we'll be certainly sharing out this presentation as well, but Arden Hills would not have received the kind of robust kind of presentation. But it certainly, you know, Josh will kind of get into next steps, which will then inform a little bit of the Rice Creek Commons side to this. So maybe,
Yeah, so I mean, I think Commissioner, one thing that we wanted to leave you with as a part of this process, I mean, I think to Commissioner Moran's point, county owns some key sites. We're working on those. Those are, you know, the expectation that there's gonna show up hopefully in that next 5-year cycle where we see a little bit of the blips where Ramsey County had its involvement in. But one thing, you know, I think we've been thinking about and how to explore is how does this data flow into some of that decision making as well? You know, we don't necessarily present as we, you know, bring forth our projects. We haven't done this kind of analysis on Rice Creek Commons specifically, or, you know, River's Edge or what have you. We could do that. We could begin to layer that as part of kind of the package when projects move forward, but also so that you are informed and others are informed about how these projects actually do impact property taxes. You know, it's not a straight line. I'll just say, as you've said, we've talked about this, like, you know, tax capacity, market value and tax capacity, sales tax generation, all of those things are not necessarily a direct through line to what is exactly your property tax bill? But I think the more we can begin to demonstrate that and board we present that, I think is a really valuable tool that people can see the merits, why developing over here has an impact on my, single family home, for
Right.
example.
And just because we're all working on River's Edge with our legislature, of course, I'd love to have our legislators see all these kinds of things as well. Have you done analysis on how it transforms a region? Like when we're talking about our River's Edge property, how we've seen development on riverfronts transform not just those parcels, but an entire region. So, and it in Milwaukee and Tampa and all the different places that we've been. So this will be for another future maybe presentation, but you could show us, because we'd love to show that to our legislators, how it doesn't just help that little area, it helps a lot of areas. So,
The short answer is yes.
Yeah.
So we look at larger geographies. We did the entire Chesapeake
Wow.
Bay Area, so we can look at larger geographies for you. And we can also, again, back to Commissioner Ortega and Mr. Zhang's point, we can look at commuter data. And we can start to understand the regional impact of that development, just from a sort of inflow outflow standpoint. And again, if the state can do a little bit more granularity with sales tax data, that's another cut level. It's just, there's just layers and layers of this.
thank you. Thank you.
I think that this was a helpful starting point. I also appreciated about the taxes, making that connection about diversifying, our land use, to be able to like strengthen up our tax base. The other part too, in just having conversations with our state legislators is this is something that they want to hear about, like an economic development strategy from the county. And also understanding that we are fully built out as well. And, I would like to see more about like, if we were fully built out and if we fully maximize the tax incentive land that we had, like what would that look like for our tax base? And then on top of that, with our capital complex conversation, right? That, it's similar to the payment in lieu of taxes, but the amount that we're asking for, just about $5 per square foot or something of usage is that 27 million. Like that is a significant amount of money that can help offset the levy too. So I think I'm trying to say that like, we need to look at that, but then also to say that, and we also need that capital complex, those dollars coming in, because those are absolute dollars that we are missing out on.
Yeah.
Because we have the capital here.
Right. In addition to all of it.
Yes.
For sure. For sure.
Well, a couple of things, my takeaways from this is, one is the idea of, with so much public land, when I say public, I mean school, county, parks, city, all that, like, how we. How we can enter into the conversations with our other government entities to be able to say, how are we co-locating? So that we're minimizing not only all the different subsets of nonprofit tax exempt lands that are public good to the community. How are we co-locating, not only so that we don't have so many different properties, but also that we're sharing parking? Because that has its own flow throughout the day. I mean, and the idea of being able to articulate that to our municipal partners or other partners to be able to say, because I know living in my community, every community wants to have their community center. They want to have their own library. They want to have their own, and they should, because they want to be able to have a sense of identity that creates their community. But how do we create it in a way that lowers the burden on that increases the benefit of those public goods to their communities and lowers the burden on their taxes? And so that's one piece that I would love to have greater conversation of, how we're educating our partners as we enter into those conversations, but also as we go through, I know this, Josh, that this is going to be one of a number of conversations that we have. I think of our residents' calls for affordability, and I think of all different populations and demographics within Ramsey County. And these are retirees who are on fixed incomes, who are in those homes, who can't figure out how I'm going to keep up with the property taxes, and people and their children and grandchildren saying, I'm never going to be able to afford a home. And how these land use decisions impact affordability for our residents, not just in property taxes, but that it really does have a greater impact. So if there's a way for us to think about, how do we create a landing place so that, our residents can kind of, we can direct them to learn how they can educate themselves, or advocacy groups who are talking about things, can start talking from this data driven and increase our own sense of literacy around the impacts of this. I think that would be really meaningful, especially given the conversations we know we're gonna be having, all of our municipalities are having, and the state of Minnesota is having around tax burdens, right? So if we can give people the tools to understand, so they know what to ask and how to ask for it, and in a way that's productive, would be really helpful.
No, I think that's a really good point, and to your piece about working with the different jurisdictions and almost, consolidating of figuring out ways that we can work together, whether it was with different properties. That's something that we're actually working on, as we look at how we can restructure the GIFTech, with City of St. Paul, with, SPPS, of really trying to take stock on those different properties and potential opportunities for these three jurisdictions to work better together, so we can bring down that burden on residents.
District Chair Commissioners, one thing to also be aware of that's unique to St. Paul is the height restrictions. We've got the state capitol building, but we also have the height restriction around the state capitol building. So as these opportunities arise, with like Sears site or otherwise, they are kind of artificially suppressed from being able to realize what I will call pretty conventional downtown levels because of the statute around Capitol Heights. So.
And the river corridor.
Yeah,
Is that aesthetic, or is there another reason? Is it just aesthetic?
It's aesthetic.
It's not
I've actually pulled it up. It's just to keep it the dominant building in the downtown.
It's just not a safety or some other kind of, or traffic.
I was thinking too.
No, but
You should add
it's
that.
important for our state planners to hear that, because that just shows the complexity associated with, the strain that is on the county and city budget. Yeah.
I mean, we had that type of restrictions even on University in Dale before, all those four corners.
Yeah.
There was a big process to go through it to get that height there because it was prohibitive.
Because it steps down quite a bit
Yes.
when you get to that area.
Yeah.
That particular.
Well,
Go
the-
across the river.
The airport is the
Wow.
other restriction.
Yes, it is.
You can only go 6 floors east of Minnesota.
And that I understand. Yeah.
Yeah, so that was some of my,
Wow. Yeah.
Well,
Thank
thank you,
you.
Heather,
Yeah, most welcome.
so much.
Commissioner, I just was just gonna close it out just by saying, we're gonna work with Urban 3 to kind of finalize this report. We're gonna start talking about presentations with our cities, and other stakeholder groups. The kind of the creation of this work plan was done in concert with a lot of, in particular, downtown stakeholders. We talked a lot about that, so we're gonna do that. We're gonna talk about a little bit more about this in terms of next steps at a workshop next week. We do have a lunch and learn scheduled for April 28th on TIF, or tax increment financing. It's not always, yeah, it's there. In part because I just, want to call out, like, that is something that absolutely impacts, when I talked about that through line, 4D as a program with affordable housing are things that make things change the directions, and the pathway gets a little bit different when you insert things like TIF, or other policy, goals and objectives. We are working, around roll up and roll out, of the Economic Development Authority, and that its creation. So things are on their way. And as I said from the beginning, this is kind of the kickoff, of our ECI Plan 2.0. We're kind of, again, bringing in that kind of base knowledge, what's been changing, and understanding a little bit more about those dynamics so that we can be better informed and we can respond with, a comprehensive economic development strategy that is, 2025, 2026 connected. So thank you. I just wanted to make sure to drop that slide in there. And
Absolutely. Thanks for all of this. I'm just really excited with this conversation and what's to come. So, thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody. Wow.
Well, we wanna get around the hype thing, just go to North St. Paul where their buildings are.
I know, they're hundreds, but you can.
Yeah.